So, welcome everybody. Please do keep your mic muted and your video off. And we would love to hear from you if you can communicate with us via the chat. So first of all, I wanted to say a big thank you on behalf of the social enterprise Rocking Your Teens. Your donations will go towards increasing resilience and inspiring and raising aspiration in teens. And so if anybody wants to find out a bit more about Rocking Your Teens, please do go to www.rockingyourteens.com and the link will be put in the chat shortly. So hello, good afternoon. I'm Jessica Rogers. I'm a leadership development specialist and an executive coach. And I am absolutely delighted to be hosting this webinar today. And in case you're wondering where Jenny is, well, she is away today hosting an event, which is very exciting. So we are here today in her absence. So, as I said, I'm delighted to be here with you today. As we know, International Men's Day was on the 19th of November, and every year it enables us to promote a really positive conversation about men, manhood, masculinity. Now, did you know that according to the latest research, only 19.7% of employees on company or organisational boards are women? And in the UK, the employment rate in every ethnic group was higher for men than for women. So creating inclusive workspaces where everybody can thrive is really a shared responsibility. And while there's often a focus on what women can do to promote equality in the workplace, it's equally important to acknowledge the role men play in this endeavour too. You know, men have the power to be allies, to be advocates, and to be catalysts for change in creating inclusive workspaces. And by understanding the challenges faced by underrepresented groups and actively working towards equity, men can really help to build a workplace that is supportive, empowering, and inclusive for all. So in today's webinar, experienced executive coaches Lisa, Carol, and Joseph, all listed in the Diverse Coaching Directory, a directory which connects corporate organizations with executive coaches from ethnically diverse backgrounds, will explore specific actions that men can take to contribute to a more inclusive work environment where all employees can thrive. So the format of this session will be that Joseph, Lisa, and Carol will briefly introduce themselves. And I will start off by asking them some questions, and then we will open it up to you for your questions and reflections too. So we're going to be keeping an eye on the chat throughout. So please do feel free to add your thoughts, your comments, and your questions in the chat throughout. Okay. So let's start with a bit of a poll. Okay, so what's your interest in today's topic? Are you a man wanting to be an ally? Are you a woman wanting to influence more men to become allies? Do you want to develop an allyship program in your company? Are you seeking out allies in the workplace? Or are you just generally curious about the topic? Just have a think and let us know what your interest is in today's topic. We'll just give you a minute or so to complete the poll. So again, are you a man wanting to be an ally? Are you a woman wanting to influence more men to become allies? Do you want to develop an allyship program in your company? Or are you seeking out allies in the workplace? Or are you just generally curious? So, if you didn't get a chance to complete the poll, do feel free to type in the chat and we'll keep an eye on the chat there. Okay. So let's start with some introductions. Should we start with you, Joseph?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Jess, for hosting us. And thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Joseph Obodna. I'm a leadership and executive coach working with leaders and aspiring leaders. I have experience of working in organizations at different levels, in private sector and in the public sector. I am also the only man in my family, in my nuclear family.
Okay.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Joseph. Should we go to you, Carol? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming online. I'm Carol Stewart. I'm the founder of the Bounding Solutions and author of the book Quietly Visible, Leading with Confidence, Influence and Impact as an Introverted Woman. And I'm an executive career and leadership coach, and I coach leaders to lead with confidence, influence and impact. I also work with organisations to develop their talent and provide a range of webinars, workshops, trainings and talks on a variety of subjects, particularly around the inclusion piece.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Carol. And Lisa?
Hello, I'm Lisa Leonce. I'm an executive career and leadership coach, and I'm a speaker, the author of the A to Z Guide, Successful Leadership Traits, which is a self-help guide. I'm also a provider of bespoke training, especially in self-development and leadership areas, including diversity and inclusion. And what I do is about transformation. I enable companies and individuals to be curious about what's possible for them, and then to explore those areas that they have influence in and assist them in reaching their goals.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Lisa. What a wealth of experience we bring, all three of you bring to the conversation today. So thank you very much for being here. Okay, so let's kick off with the questions. So our first question this afternoon is, what do you think the role of men is in creating a gender equal workplace? Should we go to you, Joseph, first?
Thank you. Thank you, Jess. It's a good question. And the reason I consider it a good question is when we look at the change, how change happens in organizations, change usually happens when the people at the top have buy-in or have an interest and have a reason to want it to happen. And from the statistics you gave, there are more men in leadership positions. Therefore, it makes sense that we need their buy-in for any change to happen. Yes, change can happen from bottom up, but effective, lasting change, the people at the top need to be brought in. So for me, that's a reason why that's a role that men have. And that role starts with some self-reflection. Why would I, at the top of an organization, want more women with me, sitting at the top with me? How can I look at it, reflect on it, and see that it may be to my benefit? It may not be a threat to me. It may enhance me and enhance the organization. But I need to have come to that conclusion myself. Yes, it doesn't make sense that I would necessarily want it, but the pressure and the encouragement from the people around me can get me to that position. So there's a role for women to continue to request and put pressure on the men, but the men need to realize for themselves that it is not something being done to them. It's something they can be part of this change.
Lovely, thank you. So a real role there. What about you, Lisa? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly what Joseph said, really. But if we want to create a gender equal workplace, it is men who have to eliminate the discriminatory behaviours in that workplace and beyond. Men have the ability to advance that gender equality faster because they are in those positions of leadership within the workplace, and that they do have that sphere of influence in terms of influencing people to change and encouraging them to be changing. And they need to be the actors of positive change. They need to challenge sexism. They need to speak up. They need to see when women are being harassed or treated unfairly and address those issues so that people can see publicly and with their influence as a leader that it's being addressed and it's not being accepted within the workplace. We know that gender equality prevents violence against women and girls as well. The World Health Organization has also found that societies that value women and men as equal are safer and healthier than others in other societies. And it's also a human right. There's so many benefits to having an inclusive workplace where everyone is valued and equal. All those differences in gender, in background experiences that they can bring, their unique talents, their skills to the workplace. It can improve collaboration, it can improve creativity, innovation, creativity, we know this. So we need men to drive this, to be able to allow society to develop and be healthier and safe for all.
Thank you. Carol, what are your thoughts?
And I would add to the great responses that Joseph and Lisa have already given, that what men can do is they can proactively promote diversity and inclusion and support inclusive policies, as well as creating environments that are psychologically safe and where everybody feels like they belong. And as Joseph and both Lisa alluded to, buying into gender equality as to the reasons why it is important, it's necessary. Not only is it morally the right thing to do, but it is also good for business, it's good for performance, it's good for the bottom line as well. And I think that because men still hold the majority of senior positions in our organisations, they have to be the ones that buy into it as well, so that they can sort of create the change that is needed. But I would also say that what men need to do is to become aware of any unconscious biases that they may have. So regardless as well of what position they are in an organisation, they could be at the most junior position or they could be at the most senior, but they can all do something within their sphere of influence to bring about change.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've all articulated beautifully the role that men can play. And so, and we talk about male allyship as well. So, what does male allyship look like in practice? Do you have any examples or do you have a definition of allyship? Maybe Lisa, we can go to you first.
For me, male allyship is someone who recognises and celebrates the different qualities women can bring to an organisation. They see those qualities where it's not being valued or equal, and they advocate publicly for fairness for the treatment of women. And it's a long life process. It's not a one-off. It's something where they've decided that they're going to work to have an inclusive workplace with intention. So basically, they're going to be take conscientious actions in making it fair for everyone. So what it looks like for me is a man listening to women, listening and building trust amongst women. So they will be advocating for women, they'll be amplifying their voices, and examples of that might be mentors, they might be sharing the spotlight with someone, they'll be staying curious about their own education in this area. So addressing and finding out about the barriers, the challenges that women face, and reflecting on their own power and privileges as a man. Like Carol said, whether they're in a leadership position or not, just being a man, you have privileges, and exploring that and understanding that will help you stay curious about what it's like for women in the workplace. Celebrating female successes is another one, and challenging sexism. When you hear this sexist language or behaviour, addressing it, even if there's no one in the room, because if you say nothing, then you're actually condoning it and allowing the behaviour to happen. So actually challenging sexism and advocating and sponsoring women is things that they can practically do to actually address this gender equality.
Lovely, thank you. And I love that definition as well about celebrating the different qualities. What about you, Carol?
So for me, allyship is somebody who supports individuals from marginalised groups. So someone from a dominant or privileged group supporting those from the marginalised and underrepresented groups. And for me, it looks like someone who is challenging stereotypes, microaggressions, speaking up in support of these groups, supporting individuals in these groups. It could be mentoring, it could be sponsoring, and using their position to influence change. So coming from using their position of power or privilege to influence change. And as I've mentioned, and no matter what level they are in the organisation, all men can influence within their sphere of influence. And to give you an example of how it can work in practice, but at the same time, it can also backfire. A client of mine was a senior leader in engineering, and her organisation wanted to hold some very important meetings, and they wanted everybody to be able to attend, and they wanted to give everyone an opportunity to attend. And so they organised 2 meetings, one at 8:30 in the morning, and then one at, I think, about 11, because they recognised that they had, you know, a lot of women who were more junior who had to do the school run. Anyway, all the women booked into the 11 o'clock one. Or the 8:30 one, it was only men that were booked onto. And so they asked my client if she could change her time to 8:30, because it looked bad that all men were at the 8:30 one. And so that's a way of, I guess they were being good in terms of trying to support, but at the same time, it kind of backfired a bit in them. And I think it sent out a clear message as well, I think.
Yeah, that 11 o'clock maybe would have been a good time to set them. You mentioned microaggressions, Carol. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that, please?
Yes. So if anybody's unclear about the terms are, so microaggressions are those like subtle, they're a form of discrimination, but it's a very subtle form where it can be behaviours or words that are said which may be unintentional by the person that is saying it, but they convey negative stereotypes or negative assumptions about marginalised groups or minority groups, which can make them feel uncomfortable. So I'll give you an example is, say, Black women and our hair. So historically, Black women wearing their natural hair in the workplace has been frowned upon, has been, we've had situations where people have been asked not to wear their natural hair to the workplace because it doesn't fit what has been considered the norm. So, you may go into work with your natural hair and someone may say, oh, look, can I touch your hair? Or, oh, why is your hair different? Or why is your hair grown overnight? Because they come in with a different style. So little things like that, which to the person saying it might seem unintentional, but they wouldn't be talking about that with somebody who was from the dominant group.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you so much for elaborating. And Joseph, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Jess. What Carol was saying about the microaggressions, it just came to me that perhaps the way of looking at the microaggressions is the aggression is not from you, but what the other person feels. So if I said something in this meeting and I don't intend any aggression, but if you experience it as aggressive, then that is a microaggression. So I think that lens of did I intend to or no, I think is did they receive it as that? I think that's my take on that. Did they receive it as aggressive? So in terms of to answer your question, the practical things men can do, I think the listen and empathizing, and that might take the form of listening, making sense of it, perhaps putting oneself, so I'm as a Black man, putting myself in a situation where I have been the minority, and what did it feel like, or I have felt that I wasn't heard. What did it feel like? That can then help me empathize with someone who in a meeting speaks and is spoken over because she's a woman, for example. So giving that person attention, then shining the spotlight on that person, encouraging them to speak, is a practical way. Another practical way is that we are all different. And if you do see that, for example, a woman who is in your team doesn't speak up, it may be you could encourage them quietly to speak up, support them to speak up, because you know that they need the visibility. So it doesn't have to be obvious to everyone that you are being an ally. You can be a quiet ally in supporting people and helping them be seen and play a fuller part, because the team will benefit, the organization will benefit, and you don't have to take any credit for it.
Absolutely. And I think that helping people to be seen is really key. And from my own, just to give an example, sometimes perhaps if somebody is a parent, a mother, and they're leaving the office at a particular time because they have to do a school run or have to do a nursery pickup, and actually being able to speak up for that person in their absence and talk about how they are good at their job, and they're maybe not being in the office as much, doesn't necessarily isn't a reflection of how good or not they are of their job that people might have made an assumption about. So I think there's an allyship around that as well, that doesn't always have to be that sort of open and forward. There are lots of different ways that you can do it. So lovely, thank you.
And speaking to that point, if what we are saying is that men are at the top of there's more men at the top of organizations, there are many meetings where you could speak, shine the spotlight on someone as capable because they are not there. Their voice is not there to be heard. But if you have a voice, then you can speak for them and give them a voice in that meeting, which can be powerful in giving them opportunities and letting people know who they are, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. That takes me really nicely to my next question. How can men and women better work together to really accelerate progress? Let's you, Carol.
I think listening, Joseph sort of touched on listening. Listening is so important. Listening to each other, being open to listen to concerns and not gaslighting. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the term gaslighting, it's a form of psychological manipulation whereby somebody may have experienced something and someone seeks to maybe undermine their experience by trying to make them doubt that what they've experienced actually happened or it wasn't as how they seemed it to be. And that can often make people, if people aren't aware that that's happening, can doubt themselves and think, well, am I over imagining this, or did it really happen in the way that I thought? So not gaslighting where someone is raising an issue, and being open to listen and understand, collaborating on initiatives, showing an understanding and going out of your way to get to know and understand people who are different from you. And I'll give you an example. This isn't related to the sort of gender equality, but my son, a black man, when he was training to be a solicitor, he worked for a one of quite a top law firm, which was quite a sort of top law firm in the city. And when he was leaving there, then one of the managing partners said how he really enjoyed having my son there because it enabled him to get to know someone who was very different to him, and helped him to challenge his stereotypes and his unconscious biases as well. So getting to know people who are different, I think we all can do that. We all tend to sort of stick to people who we're familiar with, people who we know, but just stepping out of our comfort zone and getting to know people who are very different to us, different thinking, different beliefs, and so forth, helps us to increase awareness about our own biases, and also by advocating for change.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there. Listening, and it's really listening. It's that deep listening, isn't it, to understand rather than just give your opinion. It's actually listening and taking on board,
That's right.
challenging what you may have your preconceived ideas, and that takes a level of vulnerability in yourself as well, doesn't it?
It does, yes, to acknowledge that, and to admit that as well. And I think that there's, I don't have an issue with people who maybe have a bit of ignorance to any biases that they may have, or how they maybe mistreated somebody. But once that is they become aware of it, learning from it and changing. But it's when people aren't even open to be have their views challenged, or to listen, or to even acknowledge that, yes, I have this bias, or I am acting in this way, and so what can I do now to find out what I need to do differently? That's what I don't like, is when people don't accept and then seek to change.
And actually, to accelerate the progress, they need to acknowledge.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you, Carol. Joseph.
Yeah, I think my view on this is two phrases. One is, it's not a zero-sum game where one person wins. And the other one is that it is conversations with courage and compassion. And to explain that, it is the courage comes from being able to speak up about the things that one is uncomfortable with or is not unhappy about. And in speaking up, so if it is that there's no progress for women in this organization, if you're speaking from a point of view that you understand it is real, it needs to be brought up. So you need the courage to speak up. But compassion for the person who's listening to you as well. That they may be defensive, they may feel threatened. It doesn't stop one from speaking up or doing what's necessary, but you are doing it in the awareness that it is a human being who has emotions, who you're speaking to. So perhaps you wouldn't be as surprised if they push back. If they do push back, you then need more courage to then make your point, but understand, again, listening. And it's a conversation, which means that it's two-way. That someone pushes back doesn't mean you keep quiet. You've listened to them and figure out a way of then coming back and having that conversation, so that awareness is created and actual change, lasting change comes. I think it's those two things. And sometimes, so I've been in conversations where the majority of white women, and we're talking about men and how men are in power and doing and have all the power to change things and do things. And I was sitting there thinking, I feel the same way you do. I'd like things to change. I'm a Black man, and I don't have some of the opportunities that you are assuming that as a man I have. So it's being aware of that intersectionality, that you don't lose people.
Yeah.
But it's really working together. That's the only way it can happen, I think.
So there's that collaboration and conversation. Lovely. And Lisa, what are your thoughts?
Men and women working together in partnership will definitely accelerate change. It's that transformational change that we spoke about before, about changing the harmful gender relationships and stereotypes that are out there and addressing them. And if it's not attacked is the wrong word, but if it's addressed by both genders, then it will be, I suppose, accepted more, because it won't be accepted the unacceptable behavior, like I said, if it's being addressed. So actually, if women are addressing it and challenging it, and men are challenging it, and there is nowhere else to go, then people will have to think about their behavior and actually address what's going on for them, why are they behaving that way, or actually think, why do they think it's unacceptable, and actually have those conversations and there. But it's also taking action. So, like you said, this allyship of men and women working together to accelerate progress in this area, they need to have that commitment and that consistency. Like I said, it's not a one-off, it's a lifetime commitment. So it's not just when you're in the workplace or when you're with your friends or when you're not with your friends. It's actually having that consistent approach to addressing words, thoughts, and behaviors of yourself and others. What is acceptable and what's not, whether you're in the workplace or you're not in the workplace, and standing in solidarity with women.
So hearing that, so equity becomes a lifestyle, not just something that you do at work or something that you promote at work.
Exactly.
Love that.
Good quote that, Jessica.
The lifestyle. Hashtag. So it'd be lovely to open the questions up now to those of you in the audience. If you have any questions, please, or thoughts, please do share them in the chat, because, you know, we really would like to hear from you and to be able to answer any questions that you may have, or just discuss further any thoughts that you've had on what we've spoken about so far. And as you're giving you a chance to digest what we're saying, just another question I've got for the three of you. So what specific allyship action would you suggest that a man can take inside and outside of the workplace as equity becomes their lifestyle? Lisa.
I was going to say, should I take that one? So I've got two quotes on this one. So one's from Theodore Roosevelt, and he said, "Do what you can with what you have where you are." And the other one is by Maya Angelou. "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you do know better, do better." So wherever you are, you have a sphere of influence, whether you're in the workplace, within social settings, with your friends or community groups or whatever you're involved in. You have a sphere of influence, whether you recognize it or not. And what you can do is do what you have with what you have, what you know, and do better. So be the amplifier. Be the person that is the voice for women. Make sure women's voices are heard and respected. Highlight their contributions within society or in your sphere of influence, and use your platform to communicate the needs of women. So that is the role of the amplifier. You can also be the confident, the person that they can trust. They can go and share their perspectives, what's going on for them, their fears, their frustrations, their joys, and their concerns. Be that person that listens. We've heard about listening a lot and how it's really important to have real deep listening and understanding and trusting what they're saying, and creating that safe space for them to be able to speak to them and be heard and be respected, and amongst, you know, the workplace or wherever you are. And lastly, I'd say is lead by example. You know, be an upstander, be a person that stands up for someone that's been wronged. Be that person that doesn't sit back and let things go by because it doesn't concern them or doesn't involve them, but push back on offensive language and behavior. Be that person that stands up, because like I said before, if you're not speaking out against it, then you're actually condoning it and allowing it to continue to happen, and that will delay the change that we need to see in society.
Lovely. Thank you, Lisa. Carol, thoughts?
I would say, and I think we sort of touched on this throughout today's webinar, and particularly what Joseph was saying about speaking, speaking for women if they're not there in the room. I think there's a lot of research that shows how women are often spoken over in meetings by men. And so make sure that they're providing space for women's voices to be heard. So if you're in a meeting and you see that women are being spoken over, intervene. Not to sort of make it a very public thing, but do something about it. Don't just sit there and let it happen, and make sure that you're providing psychologically safe environments for the women that are in the environments and spaces that you're in, challenging biases, your own and that of others, and speaking up and advocating and being champions for change. mentoring women, sponsoring women, and letting them be aware of opportunities, and also championing them when opportunities become available. Speak to your colleagues and speak to family members and outside of work, any of the community groups that you are in, about it being morally the right thing to do, and like making people aware of the challenges and why these challenges exist, and the systemic systems that are in place that can continue to hold women back to this day, and get involved in initiatives that promote gender equality, gender equity as well. So be a voice for change.
And I just wonder, you know, you talked about, and I know Joseph mentioned it earlier as well, where if you know, there is lots of research about women being spoken over in meetings. And as a woman, you know, if you're in that situation, what would you welcome somebody to do as an ally in the room?
For me personally, I think maybe someone just saying, "Oh, I was listening to what Carol was saying," or you know, something like that, just intervening and saying, "Oh, I was, you know, I am still sort of wanting to hear more about what Carol has to say on this."
And it's a simple thing, but it's so powerful, isn't it?
It is. That's right. Yeah.
Thank you. And Joseph,
Yes, thank you. I'll refer to answer that question, I'll refer to the title of Geraldine Gallagher's book, which is Coaching Women, Working on the System, Not on the Women. That many times what we are doing is working on the small things that come up from time to time when they come up, without looking at what is it in the system that is causing those issues to come up, because that's how we solve business problems. If something comes up again and again, you look at the root cause, you deal with it. So in this case, let's say in a meeting, the most strategic member, and I've had experience of this, the most strategic person in the team is a woman, but she's also the person who is conscientious enough to take notes. So she gets to do the notes in. And because she's doing that and focused on that, you don't get the full impact of her strategic thinking. And so what is it that can be done about taking notes in a meeting, whether it's rotating it so that she isn't burdened by doing that? How can other people learn how to take notes in a meeting? But do something that will then free this person, who's this amazing resource you have, to be fully themselves. And I think it is that looking beyond the issues and looking at the pattern. What's the pattern here? And how can we break that pattern to then enable the women to shine and to show up fully and be the best they can for the team?
Maybe more conscientiousness.
Yes. I mean, I have and probably my daughter once asked me, "Are you a feminist?" And the reason for that is because I have two daughters, so I have their interest and heart in this conversation.
Absolutely. And we've got a question from the audience. So, how can we get more men to engage in these types of discussions, or am I being unfair? That's the question.
Have you just noticed?
I'm happy to.
Have you just noticed I'm the only man in this conversation?
Well, maybe that's where the question comes from. Carol, you have some thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm happy to just, and this is a bit of a bugbear of mine. I remember speaking at a conference last year, and it was a diversity conference for a industry which is very male dominated, but I think there was about 2 or 3 men in the room, and I mentioned that, you know, it's disappointing that there aren't more men here, because men are the ones who are the dominant group in that industry. So they're the ones that are going to have to make change. And there's a couple of things I always say is that, you know, in 1969 we sent man to the moon, but in 2023 we still can't get it right with gender equality. 2020, the whole world went into lockdown. People who ordinarily wouldn't have been able to work from home, all of a sudden, within days, were able to work from home. So when something is given the priority, it's that's needed, it can happen. And so that to me says that there are certain pockets, the people that aren't vested in making this happen, because if they were, we would see it happen. And so I think that we just have to challenge people. So if you're in an organization and your organization is putting something on and there's a lack of representation from men, ask why. Go to your senior leaders and say, how come you weren't at that meeting? And I think we have to keep challenging and increasing awareness about this and calling it out.
Okay, absolutely. And thank you, Karen. Just to say, to add to that and to point something Joseph said, that, you know, it's not about people winning or losing, or nobody's losing power. It's about creating equity. And I think maybe there's a misconception about power, whether it's conscious or unconscious. Yeah. Joseph,
I was thinking, there's a term a friend of mine once used, and it's enlightened self-interest. And he used it in terms of anti-racism. It's enlightened self-interest. So and oftentimes we take it for granted that her giving a moral reason for people to change is enough. But actually, if there's a moral reason why I'm about to lose an advantage, I may not have any interest in it. I may not pay much attention. I may allow other people to do it. But so for example, this webinar, I was just thinking about it, that in the way this webinar was put out there, did we make enough effort to say to men, there is a reason why you need to be in this conversation? You have something to gain and something tangible that they can see. So in answer to the question from a member of the audience, I think it is don't take it for granted that they will be involved. Identify what is it that would make them interested in this? How will they benefit from it? And that might require you having, rather than asking them to just come, have a conversation. We're having so what would be your interest? And then when you have that, you can then use it to promote it to other people. So I would say, don't take it for granted. Find that enlightened self-interest.
Yeah. Thank you. Lisa, what would you like to add?
Yeah, it's exactly what she said. It's finding out what is it that they want to get out of it and what they can benefit from it. There's so many benefits you can get, we know, from gender equality, and also from eliminating discrimination, racism, and all of those areas. Because like we mentioned, that creativity, that experience that they have, the different perspective, bringing that together creates more innovation and increases productivity and creates a healthier, safe environment for people to work in, which means that people will stay longer. There's so many benefits for addressing this and making it happen. But it's, I suppose, marketing it that way for them to be able to do that. And what I found is also men prefer to have one-on-one conversations, not public big conversations to air things that they might not be getting 100% right. It's great when they're like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I've been doing that. But if there's something that might need improving on, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone. But it's people, even as, you know, as women as well, we prefer to have that done in private as a one-to-one rather than on a public forum.
Yeah, that's a really interesting.
And can I just add that I do think that, and I totally agree about letting people know the benefits of it, but I do think it is sad that we have to do that, because, you know, as we've said, it's morally it's the right thing to do, but we've got to look at, well, what's their interest, what's in it for them, you know. And I think it's sad that, you know, we do have to do that, but, you know, it's something that we may have to do until we get a better ship.
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely. Well, thank you everybody for attending today. Have you got any final thoughts before we wrap up for this afternoon? Okay, so as I say, thank you for attending. A huge thanks to you, Joseph, Carol and Lisa, who you can find out more about in the Diverse Coaching Directory. a directory which connects corporate organisations with executive coaches from ethnically diverse backgrounds. My colleague Tanya will add the link to this growing directory in the chat. And just a reminder that we have our final event of the year taking place on the 7th of December. And it's a webinar talking about the secrets of career planning from top coaches. So do book your place and subscribe to the Eventbrite channel, because we have a full schedule of events coming up for 2024. And again, Tanya will add a link to that in the chat. Lastly, your feedback really informs our future webinars, so please provide feedback via the link in the chat. It will take 1 or 2 minutes for you to complete, and it'd be really good to hear what you thought of today's webinar. So again, a huge thank you to Joseph, Carol and Lisa, and of course to all of you who have attended today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess, for hosting us, and for Lisa and Carol. Hi, Janice.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you Tanya as well for supporting us.
Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.